Welcome, everyone. We are delighted to have you join us today for our August T5 webinar, third Thursday at 2 or 3 today, training session for Texas PACE Authority. We are excited today to continue the unveiling of the new technical standards manual version. It comes with some very helpful tools. And so I hope as this presentation goes on that you will put your comments either in the chat section or the Q&A. We are joined today by two folks who have been intimately involved in the technical side of PACE since its inception in Texas. First, let me introduce Eddy Trevino, the director of the State Energy Conservation Office, which we fondly call SECO. SECO promotes energy efficiency and in doing so helps public entities improve their working and learning environments. And the technical assistance has gone through for decades under Mr. Trevino's management, one of those programs, the Lone Star Revolving Loan Fund, has increased its value over $230 million, making 325 loans, creating energy efficiency and helping local governments and public entities reduce their operating costs without any defaults over the long lifetime of this wonderful program. He is a registered professional engineer, a certified energy manager with 29 years of engineering and management experience. And he has brought that to the Texas PACE effort. As chair of the Technical Standards Working Group, Eddy has been active in the last year, facilitating the development, the review of the technical standards and the development of the newest version. Eddy, we are so glad you're here today. Please kick this effort off with a review of everything that's been done under your leadership this year.
Everything. Thank you, Charlene.
Related to the technical standards.
Thank you, Charlene. I'm happy to be here. I'm happy to be part of this PACE Technical Standards Working Group. It's been a process that actually started in May of last year. Between then and now, we've had over 12 group meetings and multiple individual meetings between the group meetings. There's been a large volunteer effort participating in this update process, and that includes the working group members, and most importantly, that also includes HARC, who did the heavy lifting and upgrading the manual itself and providing all the upgrading documentation, as well as coordinating the working group efforts. Both Marina and Gavin have been wonderful in what they've done to give us an update. We all know that standards need to be updated periodically. This way we can include lessons learned. And I believe with this particular update, we've effectively rounded up all of those lessons learned and woven them into the technical standards updates and all of the updates that you'll see today. So thank you again, Charlene, for being a part of this group. And I'm looking forward to the next 5 years of seeing this in action.
Oh, we are too. Thank you so much, Eddy, for making it possible and for, on top of everything else that you do, leading this effort. So we're also joined today by Jonathan Blackburn. And those of you who've worked on PACE projects with Texas PACE Authority know that Jonathan assists by reviewing the technical and financial analysis of all the PACE projects prior to closing. He also has extensive experience in managing M&A transactions for utility scale solar, wind, and storage for a large independent power producer. Jonathan started his career as an engineer at the electric utility Southern Company with various roles in environmental and energy policy and renewable energy development. He holds graduate master degrees from the University of Cambridge and Duke University and a BS in chemical engineering, and is a licensed Texas professional engineer. In addition to all of that amazing stuff on Jonathan's bio. Jonathan has, in the background and the forefront of Texas PACE Authority, helped create this organization, over 5 years ago, and has played a significant role in its success to date and in keeping it on the path forward to facilitating PACE projects as a public service to Texas. So Jonathan, we're very grateful for all that you do. And since you've been involved in this whole effort to update the standards, since you were involved in the standards the first time around, you are a wonderful person to lay this all out for everybody. So please take it from here.
All right. Well, thanks, Charlene and Eddie. I appreciate it. We'll go ahead and jump right in. We are slated, I believe, for an hour today, but we'll see if we can do it a little quicker. I'm sure everyone would appreciate that. So just real quick, kind of an recap of who are the organizations here. Texas PACE Authority, we're a nonprofit organization that administers uniform PACE programs for local governments in Texas. What do we do? We manage the Texas PACE marketplace. We administer programs on behalf of local governments. We hold contractor trainings as well as stakeholder education, with the goal being that Texas has as uniform of a PACE program across the state as possible. These updates to the technical standards, as Charlene mentioned, SECO has been very generous in leading that effort and helping coordinate stakeholder development and comments from all the groups around the state. So a special thanks to Eddie for that. And we will kind of go through some of the updates that we've had today. The main I guess task that we've undertaken here is updating the technical portion of the Keeping PACE standards, which we refer to as PACE in a Box, which is meant to be a uniform way for local governments to create and administer PACE programs throughout the state, to make it easy for property owners, for contractors, and for capital providers to have a uniform program no matter what county or city or municipality they're in Texas, and make it easy to participate in projects across different jurisdictions. So we do thank all of the volunteers that participated as part of this process. It has been basically we've taken the last 5 years of lessons learned and in updating what we think are best practices, and we think the product really represents one of the most uniform and user-friendly PACE programs of states around the country. And as always, we really appreciate HARC for providing much of the technical support behind this process. So without further ado, let's jump into the update. Really two things in the agenda today. First, I'm going to walk through what were the actual updates that we made to the technical standards. And then to conclude, we'll go through the ITPR workbook, which is a document that hopefully standardizes how the technical portions of projects are submitted, to make it uniform across projects and capital providers, and consistent in how these projects are evaluated. So let's start with the technical standards. As you're probably aware, PACE in a Box contains a technical standards manual. We have updated all of the various sections that you can see listed here. I won't read those out, but we will go into more detail on what are the highlights of the updates that were made. From the reference material standpoint, we made a few updates. The reference materials list was updated for relevance. From the recommendation of the working group, we removed the investor confidence project standards and repositioned, and the reposition guidance focuses on 3 protocols, which you can see here. However, over a dozen relevant standards are listed. I won't read those, but for reference, those are the three well-established industry protocols that we're relying on. We also added a number of other reference materials that could be utilized as part of a project. Again, I won't read those in particular, but you can find those in the updated technical standards manual. So jumping into the underwriting and technical standards, we updated relevant sections of the PACE in a Box Section 6, which is titled The Guide to PACE Project Underwriting and Technical Standards. We added some of these updates to make it easier to use and easier to reference. For example, one of the recommendations from the working group was to show examples of how some of the key factors are calculated. So for example, the three big ones being how do you calculate the eligible term of the PACE assessment? How do you calculate the loan to value? And maybe most importantly, how do you calculate the savings to investment ratio, or SIR? All of those examples were added as callouts. In addition, we updated the guidance for how savings should be determined and calculated, which is probably the source of the most number of questions that we get. This includes really two big updates. One, the requirement that utility and operating savings must be greater than 50% of the total of savings amount over the project term. And two, what constitutes utility and operational savings? Namely, those are kind of further defined as reduction in energy or water consumption, the value of any produced energy on site, any rebates or incentives due to a project, any tax savings, limited operational and maintenance savings, and modeled annual cash flows. We, in particular, included some guidance on how to calculate the SIR for redevelopment projects, which seem to be we seem to find a lot of interest in lately, and these are projects that include things like expansion of an existing building, a tear down and rebuild of a new building, or a new development on a previously developed parcel. The key, I guess, thing to note for a redevelopment project is how to calculate the baseline, since the building is essentially new. And in those projects, the baseline for those projects is established using the current Texas State Energy Code, which I believe right now is the 2015 IECC, or if the local government has a more stringent code. I know some jurisdictions around the state have moved towards adopting 2021 IECC, and that may also happen from a state basis as well. So that may be updated, but it really comes down to what is the local code, or the relevant state energy code for those projects. We also have added relevant information on the ITPR review process. As you can see, we've created a flow chart that shows exactly how does the ITPR interact with the contractor, and at what points do the ITPRs participate in their site visits and evaluations. Based on some of the guidance from stakeholder input, we also updated ITPR qualifications to include the two new qualifications that are listed there as well. We have also added a bit more information directly related to the full assessment protocol. So these are projects that require a more complex energy model. We've inserted a protocol process chart we've tried to be more clear and update standards for how the baseline of those projects should be established. And we've also updated the type of energy and water audit standard that should be employed in a full assessment type project. As you can see, we've tried to be very clear with what are the steps in a PACE project, and outline that both visually as well as detail on what happens at each step. And so we've included that process chart in the updated standards. We, as I mentioned, have further defined how to prepare the baseline for full assessment projects. We've included a checklist for what should be included in the energy water assessment report. So the engineer that's preparing that knows exactly what it is that we're looking at to be submitted. And we've also tried to standardize the reporting of energy and water savings to the relevant program administrator through Energy Star Portfolio Manager. This is something that's particularly important as we seek to kind of evaluate how our projects are performing. It becomes a database for people to be able to view how many projects have happened in across jurisdictions or in a particular area, and just how those projects are impacting the local jurisdiction. So that's our full assessment protocol. Next up, for projects that fit under the fast track protocol, we've also updated some of the standards around those. Now, the first question, probably we need to define what is a fast track project. And fast track projects really fit into three categories. One, like for like replacements. Two, a single measure efficiency project. And three, distributed renewable generation projects. Those are included in the fast track protocols. For those, we've included a process chart, a checklist of what needs to be submitted for those as well. We have further defined how to prepare the baseline for those projects and how those projects get reviewed, as well as similar to the full assessment protocols, how we would like to track the energy or water savings through Energy Star Portfolio Manager. Now, as you can see as well, the kind of flow chart looks somewhat similar to the full assessment protocol in terms of the steps of a project. Generally, the main difference is the energy and water audit is typically a little lighter touch because the projects are not as complex in the fast track protocol. So we have also added some appendices to the technical standards, and I'll hit those real quick. One, in Appendix A, we have created a standard eligible measures list. This is based on SECO's Lone Star program. It's now a section in the ITPR workbook. We have created broad categories of energy and water savings technologies on the left, and on the right, participants have the opportunity to fill in those details. In Appendix B, we have included the ITPR workbook. I will spend a bit more time going through this in a few minutes, so we'll spend a bit of time on that. In Appendix C, we have included the energy and water report requirements, tried to make a checklist of what exactly are we looking for as the administrator to be submitted, so that we can verify that a project really does meet the PACE technical standards. This is really provided as a convenience to the project engineers and the ITPR. These items are really the things that we get the most questions about, I would say. And then in Appendix D, we've created a list of definitions of terms. We are, as Texas PACE grows, we're constantly having new participants come in to the program and want to use PACE Finance. And so we've tried to make it a little bit easier and streamlined for folks to get used to our terminology and what is meant by various key terms in the Texas PACE world. So that is the technical standards the technical standards guide that we have updated. And I want to kind of turn to our second item on the agenda today, the ITPR workbook, and talk through some of the main highlights of this document. So I'm going to switch over to, this is a screenshot of what it looks like, but it's really in Excel. So I'm going to switch over to Excel. So let's see. All right. So everyone can see my screen. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, thanks, Eddie. I wasn't sure if, I think everyone's muted. All right, so really the idea of the creation of this workbook, this Excel sheet, is to standardize how projects are submitted to the administrator for review. And the reason for this, I would say probably one of the main lessons we've learned over the last few years is when you have, a multitude of capital providers and engineers that are participating in these projects, everyone has their own ways that they want to evaluate projects and submit to the administrator. What we've tried to do is kind of standardize how that gets submitted so that it is much faster and easier for the administrator, one, to review projects and make sure that they meet our standards, as well as for the folks that are submitting these, the energy engineers, to know exactly what is the information exactly that we're looking for, so that we don't have, we're trying to eliminate kind of the back and forth on specific projects around what exactly is required to be submitted. So we've developed this sheet. Hopefully it should be fairly straightforward and easy for folks to figure out. First, there's an instructions tab, as you can see, that kind of gives some guidelines for how the workbook should be filled out. The key point to point out is if the cell is yellow, that's really an input that we're looking for engineers and ITPRs to provide for us. So first up, we'll kind of go through the key tabs on the ITPR workbook. The main one that we're looking at is this second tab, project worksheet. You can see at the top, we're looking for, first of all, some just basic information around the project. Where is it located? Who are the relevant parties involved? The ITPR, the project owner, where is the project, in which region, and also some basic information around the PACE, the PACE funding itself. What term is the PACE funding expected to be, and what is the interest rate on that amount, and how much PACE financing is being requested. Fairly straightforward. Next up is information on the measures themselves. In this first column, we've created some drop-down list for where you can go in and select what exactly is each, as we call them, UCRMs, or utility cost reduction measures. So for example, if one of the measures is HVAC, you select HVAC, and then in the next tab, you write a description of what exactly is meant by that, whether it's a chiller, package units, etc. And the key bits of information we're looking for in this tab are what are the savings that you're expecting, or that your energy model has revealed due to this individual measure. And savings in this section is defined as in either the units of energy or water relevant to the specific measure. So once we have that filled out, the next section is the section on utility cost. In order for us to do a financial analysis, as you all know, we have to know what exactly is that particular property paying in terms of their various utilities. So we're asking for their baseline energy or water use before and after, as well as what is the rate that each utility is charged. So, for example, in electricity, what is your dollars per kilowatt hour, or your cents per kilowatt hour? All right. So next up, we kind of move more into the financial bits of each measure. For each measure, we're looking for how much does it cost, what is the payback, and as you can see, if there are any rebates, what's the period that it's depreciated over, things like that ultimately will fill into the financial analysis. And then finally, so these are kind of included in the as we mentioned earlier, the utility and operating cost savings. And then finally, if there are any capital savings as well, those should be listed out in this final section. The main other thing to pay attention on is under the calculator tab. One of the more common questions we get is around what assumptions are allowed, whether it's utilities, your utility escalator, things like that, or your company tax rate. And we've included some defaults with some call outs for what can be inputted here. We would ask that, if you're going to, I guess, deviate from kind of the default, we would like an explanation there. And you can see we've included escalation rates as well as the company tax rate as well for relevant tax savings. So finally, once you get all that inputted into this worksheet, the workbook will calculate the kind of the key financial metrics, and that you can see this in the bottom part of this worksheet. It will produce a circle graph that shows what are your total savings and what are the breakdown of those savings. Ideally looking for an SIR of 1 or greater, and meeting the 50% or more of the savings to come from utility and operating cost. Really, the idea here is that you can submit this. It makes it easier for engineers and ITPRs to know exactly what information we're looking for, as well as makes it much streamlined for us to receive these projects. And just so everyone knows, what we do here is we get these submissions, and we then will run these submissions through our own model, and make sure that we are getting the same SIR numbers that are being submitted. And having it developed like this makes it a bit easier. All right, so I'm going to switch back to the PowerPoint real quick. I believe at this point that does cover all of the material we wanted to go through. So I'm going to stop the presentation bit, and we have some time for questions. If anyone has any questions, I believe you can put them in the chat box.
Jonathan, while we're waiting for questions, let me ask you about the workbook. if someone finishes the workbook and the SIR is a little bit off, or the 50% is a little bit off, my understanding is that the workbook gives the MEP or the contractor the ability to go back and play around with different measures to come up with a successful qualified PACE project. Do you want to take a minute to talk about that?
Yeah, sure. And that's a pretty, that does happen on occasion if a project isn't quite able to meet the financial standards that we're looking for, whether that's an SIR or something else. It does allow you can then go back and see, well, what needs to be done in order to hit those standards. And that could be things like doing a project which is more efficient, adding additional measures that kind of increases the financials of the project or lowers the payback, things like that. We are, yeah, I guess, kind of to your point, if something, if a project is not quite there, but needs a few extra things to get over the line, we're certainly willing to provide input and how do we do that.
And is it your expectation that the workbook will make the ITPR, the independent third-party engineer reviewers, job easier?
That is my expectation, yes. And certainly I hope that is the case, especially as we get more ITPRs participating in the program. I think standardizing it should make it much easier because right now, I mean, typically when we get a first-time ITPR, there tends to be a lot of back and forth, and even with our more established ITPRs on what assumptions were used and what exactly was modeled, how did they calculate the SIR, things like that. That's pretty common, and I'm hoping that by standardizing these submissions, it will eliminate some of that back and forth and make it just much clearer to the administrator how exactly a project was modeled and the SIR was calculated.
In our training sessions, you've always encouraged people to show their work. What does that mean now that we have the workbook?
Well, with the workbook, as long as all of the inputs are included, that the workbook kind of includes, that shows your work as it is. It kind of shows how the calculations were made. The one thing the workbook doesn't do that really is left up to the ITPR is shows how the energy and water savings themselves were calculated. So like the kilowatt hour savings, for example, from an HVAC system. That really is the key bit that we ask our energy and water engineers to do, is show how, whether it came from an energy model or some other tool, that's really what we're asking folks to provide to our ITPR, so that they, as we use the term black box a lot, we're not looking for a black box model that just spits out a number and an ITPR has to take that number, at its face. We're really looking for some justification around how a particular number was arrived at.
Great. Okay, the technical standards manual and the workbook are products of Keeping Pace in Texas. And if anyone would like to see the actual draft workbook and the technical standards manual, the new version, they are posted on the homepage of Keeping Pace in Texas at www.keepingpaceintexas.org. Texas PACE Authority is committed to following the guidance of the Keeping Pace in Texas PACE in a Box model, which means Texas PACE Authority will be updating its program guide, which is our playbook for the underwriting and technical review that we do based on PACE in a Box. So that's the next step. All comments about the technical standards manual and the new workbook should be made to Eddy's team, the folks at HARC, and I think contact information for that is on the homepage along with the draft, links to the drafts on www.keepingpaceintexas.org. But we also at Texas Pace Authority, while we are learning this and we will be using this, we really welcome in a very inclusive way everybody's comments on what we can do to, as we update our program guide, which relies on the manual, but what can we do on our program guide to make it easier for everybody to follow as well? So we will be updating to reflect the new version and the tools that we hope will make the technical side of the processes much easier. And we welcome everybody's feedback. And please get that to me, Dub Taylor, Jonathan, just Marina Bedoyan Criticos, the Texas Pace Authority team. You can find us at the bottom of our website at About TPA. You can find our emails, or you can just send your thoughts to admin@texaspaceauthority.org. We'd really love to have questions, and you may need to absorb all this a little bit more. Eddie, is there anything that you would like to add? While
I have
people
a couple
think
of,
about
I have a couple of questions.
Perfect.
First question is, when does it become effective? The guidelines and the standards and the use of this book, at what point does it go live, so to speak?
My understanding is the HARC folks have asked everybody to provide final comments so that this can go live at the end of the month. So get your comments in quickly to the technical standards working group. And then as soon as they feel like they've heard back from everybody so they can be responsive, they'll, Eddie, I guess they'll bring it to you and you will ring the magic bell or whatever.
Okay.
And it will, and it'll be live at that point and we'll all pivot to it.
All right. And does that mean that any project that has started their analysis before that date uses the old technical standards, and any project that started after that date uses the updated version, or is there some sort of transition in that process?
That is a great question. And I think Texas Pace Authority is probably not the right place to decide that, right? That is really a recommendation that we would hope that would come from the technical standards working group, and then Texas Pace Authority and everybody else would follow that Pace in a Box guidance. So, you know, I think when the issue, you know, when the final version is issued and it's posted, that would be a great additional piece of information to include.
All right, thank you.
Jonathan, is there anything else you'd like to add?
Nothing more from my end. I'm hoping that you know, this use of this workbook will clear up some of the confusion that we've had in the past and make it much more streamlined for folks to submit these projects and know exactly what it is that we're looking for.
Wonderful. And there are a lot of unsung heroes in this effort. There were 2 committees of volunteer engineers that took months to share their time and their talent to put all this together. We are very excited to have this interactive workbook. We think that's a huge step forward. And as Jonathan said, the whole goal here is to create ease of use, uniformity, and quality. And Eddie, I cannot thank you and your team enough for all that you have done as public servants to bring this about.
You're very
So
welcome.
grateful to all of you.
You are welcome.
All right, and with that, we will draw this webinar to a close and thank everyone for your participation. We look forward to working with you on it. I've got about another week to ask questions and give us your feedback. So jump in there and please do so. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Eddie. Thank you, Jonathan.